Linda's heart raced as she stood outside the big hotel where her daughter's wedding was being held. She was late and she knew it. Her hands trembled as she fixed her hair and took a deep breath. She had not been sure whether to come at all. For weeks she had gone back and forth, wondering if her presence would make things worse. Emily, her only daughter, had not invited her properly. She had sent a short message, cold and formal, almost like she was inviting an old neighbor instead of her own mother. Still, Linda had decided to come. A mother's heart cannot stay away on a day like this. She wanted to see Emily in her dress, walking down the aisle smiling, glowing. Even if they were not close anymore, Linda thought maybe her quiet presence in the back would mean something. She hoped for a small glance, maybe even a smile. That hope pushed her feet forward. The music had already stopped. She realized the vows were over. The kiss had already happened. She was too late to see her daughter walk as a bride. Her chest tightened, but she told herself it didn't matter. She could still sit quietly, watch from the side, and at least be there. She opened the heavy door and slipped inside. The hall smelled of roses and candles. People filled the tables, laughing, clapping, glasses shining in their hands. No one noticed her at the back. For a moment Linda felt safe, hidden in the shadows. She searched for her daughter with her eyes. There she was, Emily, standing near the center with her new husband, Daniel, his arm around her waist. Emily looked beautiful in her white gown, her cheeks glowing, her smile wide. Linda's throat tightened. That was her little girl, now a wife. Just as Linda took a step closer, Emily raised her glass for a toast. The room went silent, all eyes on her. Linda stopped where she was, holding her breath. She thought she would hear something sweet, maybe words about family, love, or gratitude. Instead, she heard something that cut her deeper than a knife. Emily laughed lightly and said, "Thank God she didn't come." The hall filled with laughter and clapping. Daniel smiled awkwardly but raised his glass too. Some guests laughed harder than others, like they knew exactly who Emily was talking about. Linda's knees almost gave out. She froze by the door, her nails digging into her palm. She had thought maybe she was invisible, that no one saw her slip in. But now she wished she truly had not come. She realized Emily was speaking about her own mother. Linda's chest burned with shame. Her ears rang, and she could no longer hear the music or laughter clearly. It was all a blur. She wanted to scream, to ask Emily why. Why say it out loud? Why humiliate her like this? But Linda swallowed the lump in her throat. She had learned long ago that sometimes silence is stronger than words. If she made a scene, if she shouted or cried, she would only give Emily more reason to hate her. So Linda turned slowly, her heels clicking softly on the floor, and walked back out. No one stopped her. No one even seemed to notice. The cold night air hit her face as she stepped outside. Her chest rose and fell quickly, like she had run a long distance. She leaned against the wall, gripping her purse tightly. Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them quickly before anyone could see. She thought about the years she had raised Emily alone. After her husband passed away, Linda had done everything she could to give Emily a better life. She had worked long hours, sold things she loved, and even kept secrets to protect her daughter. Yet here she was, the mother who wasn't wanted, the mother to be mocked in front of strangers. Linda walked down the street with slow steps, her heart heavy but her mind racing. She remembered something Emily had hidden from Daniel. A secret Linda had protected all these years. Emily had built her life on lies, and Linda had been silent to keep her safe. But tonight, after hearing those cruel words, Linda felt her silence breaking. By the time she reached home, she knew one thing for sure: Emily's words had cut her deeply. But they had also freed her. Linda would not shout. She would not beg. She would not fight in public. Instead, she would do what Emily least expected. She would tell the truth Emily had buried. And Linda knew that once that truth came out, nothing in Emily's new marriage would ever be the same. That night, Linda sat at her small wooden desk, staring at a blank piece of paper. Her hand shook as she picked up her pen. She whispered to herself, "If she doesn't want me there, then she'll have my truth instead." And with that, she began to write. Linda did not sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying her daughter's words again and again. Thank God she didn't come. The sentence echoed in her chest like a hammer. She turned to her side, then to the other. No position brought rest. The clock ticked slowly, each sound louder than her heartbeat. By midnight she sat up, switched on the small lamp by her bed, and pulled a notebook from her drawer. Her hands shook as she held her pen. She had written letters before, birthday cards, apology notes, even goodbye messages to friends. But this letter was different. This one could tear down everything her daughter had built. It could save her or it could break her marriage apart. She whispered to herself. She should know. He should know. They both should know. For years, Linda had carried the secret quietly. When Emily was in college, she had fallen deep into debt. She had been reckless, spending money she didn't have, borrowing from people she couldn't repay. Linda had found out only when men started showing up at their door, demanding payment. Emily had been scared, crying, begging her mother not to tell anyone. Linda had worked double shifts, sold her late husband's gold watch, even pawned her wedding ring to cover those debts. She had hidden the truth, telling neighbors she was renovating when she sold furniture, telling her boss she was fine when she fainted from exhaustion. She had saved Emily's name and reputation, and Emily had promised never to forget. But years passed and the promise faded. Emily pretended she had built her life with no help. She told Daniel, her future husband, that she was independent, hardworking, untouched by failure. Linda had stayed silent, protecting her even when the lie stung. Now, after the wedding toast, Linda felt something snap. She no longer wanted to protect her daughter's pride at the cost of her own heart. She picked up the pen and began to write. Emily, you said last night you were glad I didn't come. I heard you. I walked out quietly, but I will not leave you with lies. You need to remember the truth. You were not alone when you struggled. You had a mother who sold her last keepsakes of your father to keep your life clean. You had a mother who paid your debts when you couldn't breathe. And now you stand on a stage pretending you never needed me. Your husband believes he knows you, but he doesn't. You built your marriage on a secret. And secrets, my dear, do not stay buried forever. Check the card in Daniel's name. You know which one. You promised you would close it. You didn't. He deserves to know just as you deserve to know what I gave up for you. This is not revenge. This is truth. Mom. By the time Linda finished, her hand ached, and her cheeks were wet with tears. She folded the paper carefully, placed it in an envelope, and wrote Emily's name in her neatest handwriting. She didn't sleep at all. She sat with the envelope in her lap until the sun began to rise. At dawn, Linda dressed quietly, took the letter, and walked the 2 miles to Emily's house. She did not want to be seen. She did not want to argue at the door. She only wanted Emily to read it without shouting, without interruption. She let herself into the yard, knowing where the spare key was hidden. Her hands trembled as she turned it in the lock. The house smelled of flowers and new paint, filled with gifts from the wedding. She walked through the silent hallway, her shoes barely touching the floor, like a ghost passing through. She reached Emily's bedroom. The bed was messy, still covered with dresses and ribbons from the night before. Linda placed the envelope gently on the pillow as if she were laying down a truth too heavy to hold any longer. She stood there for a moment, looking at the room, remembering Emily as a little girl, sleeping with her teddy bear, whispering dreams in her sleep. Linda's heart cracked, but she whispered, "This is the only way." Then she turned and left. On her way out, she passed the hallway mirror. For the first time in years, she looked at herself properly. Her hair was silvering, her eyes tired, her face lined with years of sacrifice. But in that reflection she also saw strength. She was not just the mother Emily could mock. She was the mother who carried truths no one else could. She closed the door gently and walked back into the morning light. The city was waking up, but inside Linda, something had already awakened. A calm certainty that the truth was no longer her burden to carry alone. At that very moment, Emily and Daniel were returning from their wedding night, still laughing, still holding hands. They would find the envelope soon, and when they opened it, the past Linda had buried would rise again, ready to shake the walls of their new marriage. And Linda knew this was only the beginning. Emily returned home with Daniel late in the morning. Her wedding dress was tossed carelessly across a chair. Her shoes kicked off near the door. She felt tired but excited, still glowing from the attention of the night before. Her friends' laughter, the flowers, the music, everything had been perfect. At least that was what she told herself. Daniel dropped their bags on the floor and kissed her forehead. "Home sweet home," he said with a smile. Emily laughed softly and walked into their bedroom. But the moment her eyes landed on the envelope resting on the pillow, her heart skipped. She froze. The neat handwriting on the front, her name written with such care, was unmistakable. It was her mother's. Her throat tightened. For a second she thought of throwing it into the trash without opening it. She didn't want to hear from her mother. Not after the years of distance, not after the toast she had made the night before. But her hands moved on their own. She picked up the envelope, staring at the paper like it was alive. Daniel noticed her silence. "What's that?" he asked, stepping closer. Emily's voice was low. "It's from my mom." Daniel tilted his head, curious. "Should we open it together?" Emily hesitated. A part of her wanted to hide it, to slip it under the mattress and never let him see. But another part of her knew that secrets had a way of clawing out. Slowly, she tore open the envelope and unfolded the paper. Her mother's words spilled across the page, each one heavy, sharp, impossible to ignore. She read aloud softly at first, but by the middle of the letter, her hands began to shake. Daniel took the paper gently from her fingers and read it himself. The room grew colder with every line. When he finished, Daniel looked at Emily in disbelief. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice quiet but firm. Emily's lips trembled. I was young. I made mistakes. But I fixed it." "No," Daniel interrupted, holding up the letter. "Your mother fixed it. She sold her things. She worked herself sick. She carried this burden for you. And you told me you built everything on your own. You lied to me, Emily." Tears filled her eyes. "I was ashamed. I didn't want you to think I was weak." Daniel's jaw tightened. Weakness isn't asking for help. Weakness is lying about it. He walked away from her and grabbed his phone. Emily's chest tightened as she watched him dial. She knew exactly what he was about to do. "Hello, this is Daniel Miller," he said into the phone. "I need to ask about a credit card account under my name." Emily covered her face with her hands. Her mother's warning line in the letter was about to unravel her last secret. Daniel's expression darkened as the voice on the other end confirmed the truth. The account had been opened weeks ago. Large charges had already been made. Dresses, venue payments, catering bills. Things Emily had insisted she paid for herself. When he hung up, the silence between them was louder than any scream. He looked at her with eyes full of hurt. "You used my name. You built this wedding on a lie too." Emily fell to her knees sobbing. "I didn't know what else to do. The bills were too high and I wanted everything to be perfect. I thought I could pay it back before you found out." "I thought you thought wrong," Daniel said, his voice low. The walls seemed to close in on Emily. She had gone from the happiest bride to a woman standing on broken ground. The laughter of the night before echoed in her ears, mocking her now. She had toasted to her mother's absence, but it was her mother who had made everything possible. Then and now. Daniel sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, the letter still in his hands. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. His quiet disappointment cut deeper than anger ever could. "Why didn't you just tell me, Emily? Why didn't you trust me?" She crawled closer, clutching his hand. "'Cause I was afraid. Afraid if you knew the truth, you'd see me the way she sees me, a failure." He looked at her, his eyes softening for a moment. "Your mother doesn't see you as a failure. She sees you as someone she gave everything for, and you repaid her with shame." Emily broke down completely, her sobs shaking her body. She had no defense left. No more lies to hide behind. The truth stood naked between them. That evening, Daniel suggested they go see Linda. Emily resisted at first, but deep down she knew it was the only way. They needed answers. They needed to face the woman who had carried their secrets and finally hear her side. When they arrived at Linda's small house, she opened the door with surprise, her eyes tired but calm. She didn't look like a woman ready for a fight. She looked like a mother who had already said everything she needed to say. Emily clutched the letter in her hand. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Why did you do this, Mom?" Linda looked at her daughter, then at Daniel and spoke softly. "Because the truth was too heavy for me to carry alone. It was time you carried it too." Emily lowered her head, guilt pressing on her shoulders. The cracks in her perfect life were no longer hidden. And now she had to face the damage they had caused. But what Linda said next would change everything even more. The living room was silent as Emily sat across from her mother. Daniel stood near the window, arms crossed, his face unreadable. The letter lay on the table between them like a weapon no one wanted to touch. Emily's eyes were red and swollen. "You ruined everything," she whispered. Linda shook her head slowly. "No, Emily, you ruined it yourself the day you decided lies were easier than truth." Emily's body stiffened, anger rising inside her, but she couldn't fight back. Deep down, she knew her mother was right. She had hidden her past mistakes. She had lied to Daniel to appear strong. She had even mocked her own mother in public as if Linda had never mattered. Now all of it had come back to crush her. Daniel finally spoke, his voice calm but sharp. "We need to know everything. No more secrets." Linda looked at him, then at Emily and sighed. "There's one more thing you don't know." Emily's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "What else?" Linda's eyes watered. Her voice trembled. "The money for the wedding. You thought you covered it with that card you opened in Daniel's name. But the truth is, you wouldn't have even had a wedding if I hadn't stepped in again." Emily frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a folded receipt. She laid it on the table. It was the transfer for the wedding venue deposit. Thousands of dollars taken from Linda's account, paid weeks before the wedding. Daniel leaned forward, reading the slip. His jaw tightened. "You paid for this?" "Yes," Linda said softly. "I saw the bills piling up. I knew Emily couldn't cover it. I thought maybe if I helped, she'd remember I was still her mother, that I still wanted her happiness." Emily's face drained of color. She stared at the receipt, then at her mother, guilt slamming into her chest. Not only had she lied to Daniel, but she had stood in front of hundreds of people and thanked God her mother wasn't there. While her mother had secretly made the wedding possible, the room spun. She clutched her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you just tell me, Mom? Why didn't you say something?" Linda gave her a sad smile. "Because I knew you would push me away. I thought silence was love. But last night when you said those words, I realized my silence had only taught you to forget me. So I gave you the truth instead." Emily collapsed onto the couch, her sobs filling the room. Daniel's hand rested on her shoulder, but his face was still full of disappointment. "Emily, your mother has given up everything for you. And you built our marriage on lies. How am I supposed to trust you now?" Emily reached for his hand desperately. "Please, Daniel, don't leave me. I swear no more lies. I'll fix it. I'll cancel the card. I'll pay everything back. Just don't give up on us." Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Linda. "What do you think I should do?" Linda looked at him with tired but steady eyes. "That's not my choice. I won't decide your marriage, but I will say this. Don't punish her for being human. Punish her if she chooses to keep lying. Because if she continues, there will be no end to it. But if she learns from this, she might finally become the woman I always hoped she would be." Daniel thought about her words. Then he looked at Emily. "One chance, only one. From now on, total honesty. If you ever lie to me again, even once, I'm gone." Emily nodded quickly through her tears. "Promise. No more lies. I'll be better. I'll make it right." The weight in the room shifted. Emily stood, walked to her mother, and knelt at her feet like a little girl again. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I hurt you so badly. I wanted to look strong, but I only looked cruel. Please forgive me." Linda's eyes softened. She touched her daughter's hair gently. "I've forgiven you 1,000 times before. I'll forgive you 1,000 times again. But don't mistake forgiveness for forgetting. Remember this night. Remember how close you came to losing everything." Emily nodded, sobbing harder, holding her mother's hands. That evening ended quietly. No yelling, no dramatic exits. Only truth finally laid bare. Emily and Daniel drove home with heavy hearts, but also a fragile hope. Linda stayed behind, sitting alone with the silence, wondering if her daughter would truly change. Weeks later, Emily canceled the credit card, paid her mother back in small amounts, and began visiting Linda more often. She didn't come with gifts or excuses. She came with honesty. Sometimes that honesty hurt, but it was real. The twist was simple yet powerful. Emily had thought her mother was a burden, someone to hide and mock. But the truth was, her mother had been the foundation of her life all along. Without Linda's sacrifices, there would have been no college degree, no clean reputation, no perfect wedding. Everything Emily had was built on her mother's silent love. And now she carried the letter in her nightstand drawer, reading it whenever pride tempted her to forget. She kept the receipt too, folded next to her wedding photo, as a reminder that behind every smile stood a mother's sacrifice. Her marriage didn't end. It began again, this time with honesty. And at the dinner table, there was now one more chair filled. Linda's.